Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Peter here. Today's video is all about oud, and oud is a new subject for me to dive into. I'm by no means an oud expert, but I'm trying to educate myself a little bit and find out as much as I can about the subject. It's quite captivating and there's a lot to it. So in this video I'm going to explain a little bit about what I've learned that I think is quite amazing, and also how some particular oils smell, because I've got some samples from Ensar Oud. The man behind Ensar is Adam Coburn, and I'm chatty to a few niche perfumers, and Ensar Oud was actually recommended to me by a niche perfumer who actually uses it in their creations. So I wanted to check them out and be a little bit more educated, and also as a way for me to select the oud that I would like to use in my future creations for my house in the future. I want to have a really good, natural oud, and that's what this is about. It's a journey into selecting my own oud and learning as much as I can as well. So in this video I'm going to be talking about 3 different oud oils that you can get from Ensar, but I also have another 8 to go through, so I'll be I'll be doing a couple of videos. Obviously what I'm going to do here, I just got these 8 today because I placed an order to have my proper oud chips, so I paid for those and got 8 more samples, which what I'm going to do is I'm going to wear them all on skin. Straight away, one of the most interesting things is I didn't realise how complex and how much natural oud changes. It has top notes, mid notes, base notes. It changes quite dramatically in some cases. It's really interesting. So I have to obviously wear these on my hand, smell them throughout the day, write my notes down of what I can pick out, like the notes that come through, how it smells, how long it lasts, and then I'm going to select and obviously talk about as well each one. So there's going to be a few videos here. In this one we're going to do 3 plus an attar and smelling a vintage Mysore sandalwood too. I guess it makes sense to start at the beginning. So what is oud? And basically it's from a specific species of tree called the Aquilarius tree. Now there is subspecies within the Aquilarius group. There's multiple trees within Aquilarius that produce Agarwood oil oud. So it's not just one specific tree, it's a species of tree that has different varieties within that, and they grow in different countries: Cambodia, Laos, Vietnam, Thailand. There's a specific type of tree that grows in Sri Lanka, and you have Indian variety as well. So how it works is that basically the tree will be infected. It will get a kind of a mold or a fungus infection, and this will kill the tree. It will take over the tree, and the tree's natural reaction to fight this fungus is to create oud oil. So it saturates the wood with the oil to heal itself. It's part of a healing process for the tree, and that becomes oud. That's what's harvested from the tree. When you look at the wood of an Aquilarius tree, it's actually quite pale, it's light in colour. It's only until it gets an infection that it becomes dark and looks like oud, because of the oil penetrating, soaking, infusing in the wood to heal itself. So once it's being harvested, what happens is that they'll grind the wood up, and there's different processes that can be quite complicated into distilling the oil. There's different ways to do it. So one way is you could soak the wood in a container for maybe a week or 2 weeks or 50 days, however long someone decides to soak the wood. Now you can soak it in fresh water, you can soak it in river groundwater, you can soak it with bottled water or from a tap, or a combination of different waters, or you can not soak it at all. But all these different variables will actually change the nuances of the finished oil, how it's going to smell in the end. It will completely change depending on these little variables, like what kind of water you used, what the pot was made of when it was soaking. Was it soaking in a plastic pot? Was it a ceramic pot? A clay pot? All these things actually change the nuance of the finished product, which I find quite fascinating and very interesting, something that a lot of people won't realise. So whether or not it's been soaked will make a difference. After it's been soaked, or it's not soaked, it will be distilled. There's two different types of distillation. You've got steam distillation, which the steam will, you have water in the base of a container and it's heated up, and the steam will pass through the wood, and that will pick out the little microscopic little bits of essential oil. It'll go through a condenser which will cool the steam back into water to create the essential oil, which will drip out, and the oil will float on top of the water. You drain the water off, and what you're left with is the pure essential oil of the oud. Or you can do hydro distillation, which is slightly different, where instead of the steam passing through the wood, it's actually boiled within the water. So all the wood, the water is in the container bubbling away like a soup, and then the steam will be condensed in exactly the same way. But two different methods of distillation. Now you can distill it in a copper pot or a steel pot, for example. That will also change the scent of the oud. So not only how you soak it, what kind of water you use, it's also, what kind of pot was it soaked in, what kind of pot was it distilled in, was it copper, was it steel, was it steam distilled, was it hydro distilled. All these factors will change the smell of the oud, which I find completely fascinating, and makes the oud very unique, because you could take the same wood, distill it two different ways, and it will smell different. I find that amazing. But that is how artisanal oud is created. It's, a lot of care and thought process goes into this. His passion, I think, really comes across for what he does. If you watch his YouTube channel and hear him talk and read some of his blogs that he writes, it's quite evident how much knowledge he has and how passionate he is. You're going to do the best you can when you have the love and the passion for it. So we're going to talk about 3 ouds. So the first oud oil we have is Oud Youssef. Another determining factor for how the scent is going to smell is the tree wild, or is it cultivated on a farm? And how old is the tree? Which part of the tree was it taken from? These are all kind of big factors into how it's going to smell. Is this tree being found in the wild, naturally infected, and it's been there for decades? That's going to be a really top high quality oud oil. Or is it being farmed? How has it been farmed? Some farms, they inject the tree with chemicals to induce the infection and to induce oud oil to be produced, and it's artificially injected with chemicals and goop that's not really very, very good. And it's done to make oud quickly, because it's a business and they need to make money, so they do it as quickly as they can. They try to rush it and induce it as quick as they can by injecting it with artificial stuff. That's not great. And they can also take it too early, where it's not been aged, for example. Or has it been farmed in a way that doesn't do that, where how they farm it in a good way is they'll drill holes into the wood and leave it, and the ants will crawl all over it and kind of help spread the infection without artificially inducing it. You can farm them more organically without using chemicals, basically. And it's better when the tree is older and aged. So this is what Oud Youssef is. It's organic. They drill the holes in the wood, let it get infected. They don't use pesticides though, or inject it with artificial resin. It's naturally infected, and they're older trees, and they're looked after. Instead of chopping the tree down like a lot of farmers would do, they just harvest the infected parts and then let the tree heal, and then over time the tree will reform and heal itself. And there's actually, this Oud Youssef was from a farm in Thailand where they had, I believe, something like 2,000 trees. So unfortunately, a little bit heartbreaking, but Oud Youssef is basically, it's no more. Once this is sold out on the website, that's it, it's gone forever, because the farmer needed the money and he sold all the trees and they're all chopped down. It doesn't exist anymore. So that plantation in Thailand just isn't there. They sold it all and it's all gone, it's chopped down. So this is the last of it, but it smells beautiful. And this is, it's really nice. What I didn't realise about oud is the complexity of the nuances that it has. You can literally smell fruity and floral notes in this. It's first impression, I was quite amazed. It's like, this is a little bit bizarre because people compare it to having nuances of rose and lily and lilac and violet, and I can completely get that. You definitely get these beautiful, pretty floral-like nuances. There's a sweet honey, almost honey-like sweetness, and this beautiful mellow woodiness that you typically associate with more of a gentle oud. It's not animalic, it's not barnyard. It's incredibly beautiful with these floral notes and a subtle sweetness. It's really, really lovely. As it dries down, I found the floral-like tones kind of slowly faded away, and in my imagination, one of the notes that seemed to be akin to was something like tobacco almost. Maybe it's the slight sweetness of the woodiness, because tobacco has this kind of similar kind of slight sweetness, but it went from floral and honey-like to smelling a little bit like tobacco. It's interesting the way it changes. This one on my skin, just 2 little swipes with the dabber, lasted 7 hours on my hand, and you can smell it, So I thought that was quite impressive. Oud Youssef, beautiful, really good introduction to oud actually. I don't think you could get a better introduction. If you're not a fan of oud, I still think you would love this. I think it's that pretty, you could make a perfume or wear it as a perfume on its own. And to make a perfume with it, I don't think you would need to really do a whole lot because it's doing the work for you. It smells really beautiful. So Oud Youssef is the first one, 7 hours longevity. It smells floral and honey-like sweetness with a beautiful, smooth, mellow, woody oud kind of smell. Difficult to describe oud, to be honest, but it's floral, it's sweet, it's very clean and mellow and very pretty and beautiful. Definitely the most accessible one that I've tried. And that one is from an organic farm in Thailand that unfortunately doesn't exist anymore. The next one is Oud Royale, which is from Sri Lanka. And this one, in the opening, I get a slight honey-like sweetness. It's ever so slightly sweet, with the beautiful smooth woodiness of the oud. You get the oud wood smell, but it has this subtle, warm, resinous-like sweetness to it. But this one doesn't quite have the same, it doesn't have the floral nuances that Youssef has, but this changes, and it's quite interesting how it changes. On my skin, after a couple of hours, it develops into smelling quite earthy and borderline kind of soil or dust or dirt. It smells like the floor and reminds me more of being transported into the jungle in Sri Lanka where this tree is growing, and smelling the earth below the tree. It has a distinct kind of earthiness to the scent. And one image that it gave to me, which was a very kind of clear picture when I closed my eyes when I smelled this, it reminded me of the scents that you get in the air before a tropical thunderstorm. There's a very distinct smell that hangs in the air just before the rain falls, and I smelled it a few times, and it's this kind of dust that just floats, hangs in the moisture in the air, and you get a very distinct smell. And if you've smelt it, you know exactly what I mean. And it's the smell of the dust in the air before the rain falls. It reminds me a lot of that when I close my eyes in the middle of the fragrance. Like I say, this has top notes, you know, mid notes. It develops. It's not singular. It changes. It has dynamics to it. But that's the middle of the fragrance to me, is the smell of dust hanging in the air, combined obviously with this beautiful woody oud smell. Very interesting how it changes. As it dries down, it almost gets more rooty and reminds me of almost nuances of vetiver. It gets a little bit darker, more woody and less earthy. It seems to go through changes. You know, it starts off slightly sweet, slightly resinous and warm, going into this dusty, earthy kind of heart, and then into a more woody, rooty kind of base. and also slight incensey kind of vibes as well, almost like myrrh and frankincense a little bit. Very complex smell and very interesting. It's something I think you experience rather than describe, but it's very interesting. I know this one took a lot of effort to distill. I believe Adam lived basically in Sri Lanka for 3 months to distill this one, and it rained and flooded, and it was more of a difficult process, I think. But fascinating how it's turned out and how it changes. In terms of longevity, for Oud Royal, it was around 7 hours on my skin before fading away into a skin set and disappearing, but I think 7 hours for one tiny swipe on your hand is pretty impressive. So the last oud oil we're going to talk about is Assam Organic, which is, this one is an Indian oud, and this one is a little bit more challenging for someone that's not used to oud. For me personally, this one is quite barnyard smelling, although I personally think if you're very familiar with oud, you've grown up around it and you burn it all the time and you enjoy, you know, a lot of different oud perfumes, this probably isn't challenging at all. You probably find this very beautiful and not animalic in the slightest. For someone that isn't used to that kind of palate and taste, this does, you know, strike you as a little bit barnyard like. I've grown up around fields and farms that have cattle and goats and sheep and horses everywhere, and for me this reminds me of walking past, taking Teddy for a walk, going past one of the farms where they've just kind of spread the field with, you know, manure, and the cows are out, you know, from the cow shed. You kind of have that distinct farm smell. It smells like a farm to me. Or even when you stroke a goat, a goat's hair or horse hair has that very distinct smell when you smell your hand afterwards. It's kind of dry and dusty, and it kind of has a little bit of that as well. But this one isn't unpleasant. It's not like a complete stinker. It doesn't, it's not revolting like some ouds that I have tried. They're quite, or, you know, some oud perfume, should I say, that I've tried can smell quite, you know, quite bad. This one isn't like completely overpowering, but it does have nuances of that kind of thing going on, but blended with this very smooth, beautiful wood. So it's a combination of a little bit of barnyard skank that's not ridiculously too much in my opinion, but it's definitely there for me. If you enjoy something like Xerjoff's Alcat is a good example, which uses quite to me a skanky barnyard oud, then you would have no problem with this. Alcat is way more dirty and fecal in tone. You know, it almost has parallels with civet. This one is cleaner than that. So if you appreciate perfumes like, you know, Xerjoff's oud perfumes, then you would have no problem with this. But for a novice, then you might find it a little bit skanky. Personally, I found the barnyard nuance to last around 2 hours, and then it changed, it disappeared, and you're left with this beautiful, smooth, gorgeous, exotic kind of, you know, darker wood of the oud, and it's beautiful. And this one, my god. How do I talk about the longevity? Okay, so I would say 9 to 10 hours, and then it's a skin scent. But I'm not kidding, I could smell this thing on my hand over 30 hours later. 30. I was amazed, like, how is that possible? And I didn't wipe very much, it was literally a swipe, and I could smell it over 30 hours later. And that's having, you know, washing hands and things through the day, and it's still there 30 hours later. Incredible nuclear oud. So if you like very long-lasting oud, Assam Organic is the one that you want to try. But you're going to need to appreciate a little bit more of an interesting opening. A lot of the oud oils by Ensar, other distillers just wouldn't make perfume from it. It would have been, the wood would have been sold off as burning incense chips or created into sculptures or left as investments. They wouldn't have turned it into perfume oil. I think Adam is one of the few people that goes for the highest quality oud possible and the most old, and ages it. You know, some of these are aged for a long time before he actually sells them. and you know there's a difference there for quality and integrity and passion for oud that not everybody shares. One of the reasons why oud is so expensive to buy is the trees are going extinct in the wild. They're rare to find. You can walk through the jungle for a long time and not find any. You know, these are hard to come by in the wild. And even if you find one in the wild, doesn't mean that it's naturally infected. It might be a perfectly healthy tree. It might not be producing oud oil. And the problem is the demand is so high for wild oud and oud in general that when they are found, they're usually cut down, and that's it, the tree's gone. It's pretty sad because if we look into the future, it's very possible that there might be no wild oud trees left. One day they might all be extinct. There might only be cultivated farms. And the problem with cultivated farms is because the demand is so high, they're cheating, they're injecting it with these artificial chemicals to induce. They're not aging the oil properly in the tree. It's cut down way too young. They're young sapling trees rather than mature trees, just to get as much as they can as quickly as they can because the demand is too high. And so it pushes the price of oud up to get quality oud, to get good quality oud. So depending on the grade of the oud, the quality of the oud will also obviously determine the price. These ones obviously are carefully, thoughtfully selected and distilled with a lot of expertise and craftsmanship. So these particular ouds, if they're taken from the wild, they're taken from either a tree that's basically going to die, like it's completely infected and it will die, then they will harvest from that tree, or they will take from a living tree without cutting it down. They'll take the infected pieces and let the tree heal. So they're not actually destroying the tree to get the oud. They're not raping the tree. You know, they care about the tree as a living organism, as a living thing. So next we have an attar. So this is a finished perfume attar called Sultan leather attar. And this is quite complex, and actually I struggled to pick notes out of this apart from you get an obvious, very beautiful rose. And the rose was created in the early 80s, so this is a very old vintage rose oil combined with multiple different ouds. There's not just one oud in here, there's a few different ouds, very expensive ouds as well. But this is quite beautiful. In the opening I see rose, and it's very bright and clean and beautiful rose and velvety soft, but I also get what smells to me like natural incense accord off like frankincense and myrrh. That's how it comes across to me. You have this beautiful incensey, resinous, slightly sweet accord shining through this bright rose. If you like the combination of rose and incense, I think you would love this one. And that's how it comes across to me. As it dried down on my skin, it got a little bit powdery, almost like there's orris in here, but I'm not sure. But it gave more of the illusion of like a velvety, soft, bordering line powdery, but totally like velvety smooth, quite sensual. In fact, it's so complicated to know what I'm smelling because oud has so many different nuances that what I'm smelling could be oud or it could be resins. I'm genuinely not sure because oud is so complex. This one could be the oud just has maybe natural incense nuances, I have no idea. To me, the oud aspect of it feels mellow, like it's not an obvious oud note in my opinion. But even the kind of the woody aspect of oud isn't totally prominent in this. I get rose throughout the whole life, and I get incense through the whole life. And the oud feels very mellow. It's not skanky barnyard or anything like that. And it gets a little bit powdery and velvety soft as it dries down. It makes me wonder also, maybe there's oak moss, I'm not sure, but oak moss has a similar kind of texture to what I'm smelling. I'm actually not sure if there's ambergris in here because there's something sparkly and waxy a little bit. It reminds me of nuances of ambergris, but I might be wrong. Maybe it's just the way it's all combining together. There's no real notes listed other than the oud and the rose, so anything else in here I am guessing. But I get impressions of possibly ambergris, possibly oak moss, and it comes together smelling like rose incense that dries down slightly powdery and velvety. I actually don't get leather, actually. I don't really get the impression of leather, but I think for the way I sense that, it would be more of an incense rose, but I think it's beautiful. And the performance was around 8 hours on my skin. Again, with just like the tiniest amount of a swipe. So if you had a bottle of that and you dabbed it on properly where it's a little bit thicker, I would imagine it would last a couple of hours longer than that. If you like attar oils and you like rose, I would definitely recommend trying that one. That one is a little bit expensive, but to be fair, it uses rose oil that's over 30 years old, and it uses a combination of very rare, expensive, oud oils. So it is good stuff. Next one is a tiny little sample of Mysore sandalwood that was distilled in 1984. This is older than me, and it is beautiful. I am very fortunate that I have a few different Mysore sandalwoods from different years. I have modern Mysore sandalwood, and I also have a vintage Mysore sandalwood that was given to me that's from 1930, so incredibly old and very, very precious. I will keep that oil forever. Mysore is an incredibly beautiful note in perfume. It's milky and smooth and thick and almost creamy like. It's so rich, and again, like oud, actually has quite a lot of complexity to the scent. It's not just a simple smell. I noticed with the ages I've got, because I do have modern and very old, that the older it gets, the more character it has and the more beautiful it becomes. The modern one isn't quite as rich, it isn't quite as milky and thick and smooth. It seems to be the older it sits, just the more character it builds in the oil, and this one is pretty good. That's it. I'm going to do more videos once I've tested the other oils and try and describe how they change and the odor profiles for you guys. And I will let you know my personal favourites when I've tried all of them and which ones I'm going to be purchasing to try and make perfume from. So that's it. Hope you enjoyed the video. I'll see you again next time with another one. Take care. Bye bye.